Republican of Tennessee. Welcome back, Senator Hagerty. So, Rob Portman on the Sunday show, Senator Rob Portman, Senator Bill Cassidy, both said not enough details, not enough pay-fors. Mr. Schumer, stop rushing us about a Wednesday vote to go on with the debate. Apparently, Senator Mitch McConnell echoed that today on the floor. What's your take about that? How much trouble is this bill in?
Well, I concur with what Leader McConnell said today, as well as my other colleagues. You know, Larry, this is starting to feel a lot like Obamacare. You remember, you've got to pass it to find out what's in it. They don't even have language. And Schumer's talking about moving through the procedural process starting as early as Wednesday to kick this off without even having language in place. I think it's folly to do it. We're talking about trillions of dollars. The size of this package alone is just, you know, amazing. And the fact that they want to shove it through again says to me that it's in deep, deep trouble.
What is it, the terminology? Is it shell bill or a shell vote? What is that? Meaning there's no details in it?
Yeah, it shall, and then there'll be blanks to be filled in later by the staff. We're not going to be able to move forward under a situation like that, and I hope my Democrat colleagues feel the same way as well.
From what I gather, again, we had Senator Portman on the show last week. I heard him on Sunday, heard Bill Cassidy on Sunday. The pay-fors are very vague, Senator Hagerty, and that doesn't work for Republicans. It shouldn't work for anybody, but what do you hear about these pay-fors?
Well, I think one of the big ones is the IRS enforcement that would have really pushed the IRS to harass Americans even more. Seeing that off the table, I think, is a great relief to many Americans. And you've heard Senator Manchin say this. He doesn't want to pass something that's not going to be paid for. Well, right now, we can't see a way to pay for certainly the $3.5 trillion that they're talking about pushing through in this so-called reconciliation process, which, Larry, it's not what you and I would call reconciliation. It's, in fact, just a reckless runaway spending bill that the Democrats are trying to push through on a partisan basis. You add that to the bipartisan package that we're talking to, another $1 trillion, how is that going to be paid for? I think that if you listen to what Joe Manchin's saying, I think most Americans would agree it needs to be paid for if it's going to be passed, and I don't see a way to get that done right now.
Well, even worse, I mean, I guess Senator Schumer and the Democrat budget resolution, vague as it is, would double count the IRS thing, which, by the way, isn't going to generate any $700 billion in revenues. There's no way. But apparently it's counted in infrastructure, and they're going to count it again in reconciliation. But, Senator Hagerty, I'm interested, you know, Senator Mark Warner, who I think is a genuine moderate. I've known him a long time. He was a successful businessman in private life.
Yes.
He said the whole thing has to be paid for. The whole thing, meaning reconciliation and infrastructure. As you say, Senator Manchin, others have echoed that. It has to be paid for. But that being the case, you could be looking at a $4 trillion tax hike, which, I don't know, isn't that a showstopper, that kind of tax hike, $4 trillion?
That's got to be, Larry. And you think about the direction that they're trying to take our nation. We're already at roughly a $30 trillion debt. We don't need to see more debt. And so if you're going to do it, you're going to have to put a tax hike in place. They're not going to generate the revenues. You know the aggressive form of these taxes that they're talking about. They're talking about putting a tax on job creation. They're talking about doing away with fossil fuels as we know it. They're talking about the Green New Deal disguised. All of this, raising death taxes, trapping capital in place, all of this is going to push jobs over shore, and it's going to slow economic growth. That's going to have exactly the counter effect. And they think they can tax their way through this. No, what they're doing is they're just pushing us toward more and more socialism in this country. We've got to stop it.
I know it's a tough call, but you have the so-called Gang of 20, which is the, I guess, 10 Republicans, 10 Democrats, more or less. How much unrest is there now? You know, we heard it from Portman. We heard it from Cassidy. We sort of heard it from Mark Warner, not entirely, but somewhat. How much trouble is infrastructure bill in?
I think we go back to where you started this conversation just a couple of minutes ago, Larry. We haven't even seen the details yet. But what we have heard is deeply, deeply concerning. What we've seen is just this push toward more and more social programs that will be devastating to the economy. And we're looking at this on top of massive inflation. We just saw the CPI last month from May to June on an annualized basis increase 12%. You may have seen my commentary with Chairman Jay Powell last week when I was talking with him about the inflation targets. I get it. Long term, 2%, you may overshoot a little bit to get there. 12% is far beyond a small overshoot. This is a dramatic tax on hardworking Americans every day. You just go to the pumps, see what's happened to gas prices. Even if gasoline isn't in the core CPI, everything that people in my home state of Tennessee, every good, has to be transported to be purchased. Try to buy a home in Nashville right now. Home prices are up 15% plus. I mean, we are seeing inflation roll through this economy, and it's part and parcel to the policies of the Biden administration. I understand the transitory aspects that may eventually work their way through, but this isn't a pig in the python moment. This is the direct result of policies like the Biden administration started at the very beginning, doing away with the Keystone XL pipeline, forbidding drilling on federal property. What does that do? That increases the input factors for energy for every industry here in America. It makes us less competitive. It makes China laugh all the way to the bank.
And by the way, cheering on for Saudi Arabia, Russia, OPEC Plus, cheering them on to produce and telling our guys not to produce. No, I think you're right. Temporary or not, inflation is an issue. It's cutting into real wages. It's raising gasoline prices, and it may run through many, many more months. I would think that would slow down all this spending and taxing, but we will see. Senator Bill Hagerty, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.